Hello. This is the conclusion of this series of 6 programs. And in this last episode, we are going to pick up where we left off after episode 1, when we viewed the founding of Buchtel College and the creation of the Municipal University of Akron. Progress in the first 80 years of the school was often interrupted by frequent financial turmoil. We've also spent some time reflecting on the university's history and innovation in the sciences and the arts, in the continuity of the traditions of campus life and athletics, also with how we've engaged with the wider community. In episode 5, we also focused on the events of women's issues early on and how the university has responded to the 1960s upheaval involving war and civil rights. Now, in this final episode, we're going to take a glimpse, really, into the recent past, the last 70 years, of how this remarkable institution has survived, how it has thrived at times, and how it continues to evolve. By 1950, University of Akron President Dr. Heselton Simmons had devoted 40 years of his life to the school. He was one of the last graduates of Buchtel College, class of 1908. He also taught classes and succeeded Charles Knight as head of chemistry. He began to make a 1-year-long transition from the presidency. Dr. Simmons saw the school through the chaotic years of the Great Depression, when Akron had the highest industrial unemployment rate of any city in the United States. He shepherded the school through the war years and accommodated the influx of GIs after World War II. He did everything he could to create a platform on which his successor could build a university worthy of its history. On September 1st, 1951, Norman P. Auburn was hired as the 10th president of the University of Akron, 80 years after its start as Buchtel College, 38 years since it became a municipal university. The 46-year-old Auburn had worked 18 years at the University of Cincinnati as a vice president, dean of administration, and secretary of the Board of Trustees.
One of the first things I did as we got along was to establish a community and technical college. We tried to mix town and gown. We used the term, keep the lamp of learning burning. And my vision was ultimately that this should become a state university.
Auburn arrived in Akron at a time when enrollment had declined again. Faculty salaries were described as disgraceful. University historian George Knepper noted that the faculty and administrative staff was demoralized, and overlaying this was what he described as a depression psychology.
Akron was in the doldrums psychologically, in my judgment, in the post-World War II, immediate post-World War II era. Few cities in the United States were hit as hard by the Great Depression as Akron, Ohio. It was just devastated. Into this environment then comes a new president for the University of Akron, which was at the time still a small, struggling, municipally supported university. Norman P. Auburn, who was a major administrative figure at probably the best of all of the municipal universities in the country, the University of Cincinnati. And he came into Akron with a very clear vision of what it would take to make the university into a real, legitimate, bona fide university with graduate programs, with research activities, with broadened undergraduate curricular offerings, and so forth, with dormitories. He brought a tremendous executive energy to this task. He's one of the most organized people I've ever run across. And he had the power to persuade Akronites, including a very, very conservative board of trustees, that it was time to take a chance on Akron, Ohio. And I believe, more than any single individual, he helped overcome what I call a depression psychology that had settled in on the city.
2 months after his arrival, a city charter amendment seeking additional funds from taxpayers failed. The following May, it was defeated again. Auburn rolled up his sleeves, and in November 1952, the levy, assuring some degree of stability and an increase in salaries, finally passed. Auburn was open to new ideas. He suggested becoming a county university to bring in that population that fled Akron to the new suburbs. He even considered for the second time in the century a merger with Kent State. Norman Auburn knew that buildings were important as a symbol of the university and an inspiration to the city residents. Between 1951 and 1965, he led building levies in 4 different elections. He built Memorial Hall in 1953, Colby Hall in 1955, a modern students' center in 58. In 1963, the university added an education building, a new college of business administration and law school. St. Paul's Church became the Firestone Conservatory of Music, and in the 1960s, he built the first 3 residence halls on campus since Old Bookdale burned to the ground in 1899. Auburn jumped on the federal push for urban renewal and negotiated a major gift from Firestone to build the 23-acre Lee R. Jackson Field in place of dozens of deteriorating homes. This had the psychological benefit of being able to see the entire campus from East Exchange Street. For the first time in its 90-year history, the university had breathing room. Auburn developed the first land use plan in the school's history, 180 acres, from Market on the north to Exchange on the south, from Broadway on the west to Route 8 on the east. Akron's enrollment was growing faster than any other university in Ohio. By 1964, UA would boast 10,000 students. This phenomenon emerged during a period of unprecedented growth of the middle class, who expected that their children would be going to college. There was a tidal wave of high school graduates emerging from the baby boom. Auburn developed a university council of deans and faculty representatives to participate in decision-making. He was making a small institution into a major player in higher education. In 1956, Akron became the 5th university in Ohio to offer doctoral work. The first PhD program was in polymer chemistry. But by the mid-1960s, the school had hit a ceiling on funding. The Akron income tax could only provide so much and wasn't keeping pace with what the university needed to grow. For 10 years, Auburn had been lobbying the state legislature for support. He found an ally in Governor James Rhodes, who after his 1962 election supported state assistance to Akron. In July 1965, the legislature enabled state status for the University of Akron. A year later, Akron voters overwhelmingly approved the proposal, and in 1967, the legislature appropriated operating funds for the State University of Akron. $10 million for capital improvements poured in from the state. The university constructed a science and engineering building, the largest educational building in the state of Ohio. In 1967, it would be named in President Auburn's honor. Auburn's crowning achievement would also end his 20-year term as president. The Challenge 70 campaign would be the largest fundraising effort in the university's history and was responsible for underwriting the construction of E.J. Thomas Performing Arts Hall. In 1970, the university had to undergo a transformation to meet the demands of a world changed by technology, by social and economic needs, by new management philosophies which changed every institution of society. Over the next 50 years, the school would be led by 9 presidents. Dominic Gazetta served as the university's first provost and became the 11th president in 1971. He oversaw completion of the C. Blake McDowell Law Center, Mary Gladwin Hall for the School of Nursing, Bierce Library, and the building for the performing arts that bears his name. Under Dr. Gazetta, Wayne College was founded in Orrville in 1972. William Muse became the 12th president in 1984, linking the university with the city through the Span the Tracks project, including the acquisition of the Polsky Building. During his tenure, the College of Polymer Science and Polymer Engineering was created, the first of its kind in the world. The $18 million Goodyear Polymer Center opened in 1991. The Rhodes Arena opened, as did the Ocasek Natatorium. Peggy Gordon Elliott was selected as the first woman president in the institution's history in 1992. Work was completed on the Polsky Building and a $28 million renovation for student services, continuing education, a university bookstore, and office and classroom space. Marion A. Rubel became acting president in 1992. Faced with a potentially crippling deficit, he implemented $14 million in spending cuts to place the university on improved financial footing. He presided over President Bill Clinton's town meeting on race in December 1997. In 1999, Dr. Luis Proenza became the 15th president of the university. He led the initiative to recognize the University of Akron as the leading public research university for Northern Ohio. His $200 million Landscape for Learning physically transformed the Hilltop campus with 18 major renovations, 34 acres of green space, and 22 new buildings, including Infocision Stadium, a new student union, and a new Arts and Sciences building. Dr. Scott Scarborough became the 16th president in 2014 and initiated an experiential learning center for entrepreneurship and civic engagement. With the LeBron James Family Foundation, the university created a nationally recognized tuition-free program for graduates of the LeBron James I Promise program for Akron's at-risk youth who complete high school. After serving as dean of the law school, Matthew Wilson became university president in 2016 and inspired cutting-edge technology programs in esports, making Akron one of the first Division I universities to host such an initiative. In 2018, Dr. John Green, who served the university for more than 30 years as an administrator and teacher, became interim president. He is best known as director of the renowned Ray Bliss Institute for Applied Politics. Dr. Gary L. Miller became the 18th president of the University of Akron on October 1, 2019. He is presiding over the sesquicentennial of the institution that began as Buchtel College in 1870, became the Municipal University of Akron in 1913, and a state university in 1968. A quote, often attributed to Mark Twain, is that history doesn't always repeat itself, but the present day can rhyme with the past. As the university entered its sesquicentennial year in 2020, the university is operating amidst a global pandemic, not unlike the one in 1918, when the whole campus was quarantined. Classes on campus in 2020 were suspended, and students and faculty had to move their teaching and learning online. It brings into focus, once again, the fragility of maintaining a university for 150 years, a history fraught with shortages of students that marked the early history, and shortages of money that has defined much of the history of Buchtel College and the University of Akron for a century. An economic depression almost shut down Buchtel College after 1895. During the Great Depression, teachers on campus had to be paid in scrip because the college didn't have enough cash. And the university has weathered multiple recessions from 1870 to 2020, when the university will be transformed again in ways we do not yet know. We've also reported on a parallel theme in this series, the determination with which the university has met every challenge, including the latest one. What has sustained Akron is the recognition that failure has never been an option. The university is critical to the success of the city, the county, and the whole community. We are lifted up by the pockets of excellence that have always given so much to really the entire world. Buchtel College and the University of Akron have been enriched by a vanguard of individuals who have called this Hilltop campus their home. And a component of our success has been the student. Now, on some campuses, they're called non-traditional students. But for Akron, the women who graduated from Buchtel College before they could vote, the men who worked in the rubber shops 10 hours a day and then earned a degree in night classes, well, they are a tradition unto themselves. They are lifelong learners with one foot on campus and one foot in the workaday community, the traditional Akron student. Some would call that resilience. In Akron, we call it grit. Thank you for participating in our sesquicentennial celebration.